Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I have a very special guest. But first, let's take a trip down memory lane, shall we? Whole world is celebrating this celebrating night. Yes, the whole world is celebrating. And I am your host, Tommy Throwback Kovac. And today is a very special episode because I will be interviewing Tony Timpone, the founding editor. Founding is actually not a good word. Legendary editor of Fangoria magazine. I keep saying founder because this man, by the time he got there, Fangoria magazine became what it became. It became huge thanks to this man. I mean, he is an absolute legend of the genre of horror in magazines and all that stuff. And I had the pleasure of interviewing him last night, one of the biggest thrills of my life. And he's also a Q&A moderator. He will be moderating Q&As at Son of Monsterpalooza in Burbank in 3 weeks, September 15th through the 17th. So if you're in the Los Angeles area, check him out. But in the meantime, here is my interview with the legendary editor of Fangoria magazine, Tony Timpone.
How you doing? I'm doing great, Tommy. Everything is A-okay. That's so awesome. It's such an honor that you agreed to do this interview. I didn't collect, Fangoria when I was growing up. I had friends who did, and I got to read theirs. And my parents never let me go to conventions when I was a kid because they didn't like horror, I used to watch that documentary that you guys made for video about the first weekend of horrors. Right. Yeah. So I always knew who you were and stuff, and this is pretty cool that you agreed to talk to me today. You bet. So fire away. So how did you get into magazine editing? Was that something you always wanted to do? Not necessarily. I was in college studying journalism, and I read Fangoria since issue number 1, and it was, a big dream that someday I could actually write, let alone edit the magazine. I never thought it would ever happen, but I was very lucky. While I was in college at NYU, I was freelancing to a magazine called Starlog, which was Fangoria's big sister publication. And so I used to send them articles, but I really wanted to write for Fangoria, but back then all the articles were written by the 2 editors, Dave Everett and Bob Martin, so there really wasn't room for freelance material. So when I got out of college, in 1985, a position opened up at Starlog, and they hired me fresh out of school. And at the same time I started, the co-editor of Fangoria, Bob Martin, quit to go work on a music magazine, so there was only one person working on Fangoria, and they needed someone quick. I was in the right place at the right time, and I went to work right away on Fangoria, writing articles, captioning photos, editing, everything. And like I said, I was fresh out of college. It was my dream job. I never thought I would actually luck out like I did, but sure enough, there I was. There I am, and it was a great ride. Now, what year did you get there? 1985. 1985. And they started around what, 78, 79?
Fangoria started in 1979.
And was it pretty successful when you got there?
It was, it had gone through some slow stretches right before I got there, and it was even, the publisher at the time had even considered canceling Fangoria in the early years because it wasn't selling. But then a movie called The Nightmare on Elm Street came out, which became an annual phenomenon, nightmare movies coming out one a year, and Freddy Krueger became this household name, and we put him on the cover every time a new Freddy movie came out, and the magazine started selling like hotcakes. So the magazine really took off. Freddy really boosted our circulation, and we helped build that franchise with all our support of the movies, and it was a great run. There was a lot of horror during the 80s period, and a lot of Freddy wannabes, a lot of interesting stuff coming out that you see being homaged on TV shows now, like Stranger Things. And it was a great time for horror, and not every time is a great time for horror now. So that's, Fangoria really came into its own just as I was becoming editor. Because Freddy hit at the same time, so again, it was a case of being in the right place at the right time.
Freddy Saves Fangoria, that would be a perfect name for a movie.
Yeah, it sure would.
So you were already a huge horror fan as a child, right?
Yes. I grew up reading Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine. I also like science fiction and fantasy, comic books. I was a real genre kid, and I was lucky my folks didn't take me to Disney movies. They took me to American International Pictures movies at the drive-in, and I always went to horror films as a kid, and I used to always watch them on TV, and it was a lifelong obsession.
Yeah, the late night horror shows with like Vampira and like Chili Billy and all of them.
No, we didn't really get much of that on the East Coast. We had Chiller Theater and Thriller Theater and Creature Features, but the hosts weren't a big component of those. That was more like a West Coast, Midwest phenomenon.
Yeah, Chili Billy was in Pennsylvania, as a matter of fact.
That's right, Pittsburgh, yeah.
And during those years that you were at Fangoria, how do you think it progressed and evolved from the time that you got there?
Well, how did it change when I got there?
Yeah, like in terms of like content or publications.
Well, before I became editor in 1987, about 1987, I worked as a managing editor to Dave McDonald, who was also the editor of Starlog, and both of us decided that Fangoria had to become a little more mainstream. We wanted to see more color pages. We wanted to be more of a slicker publication than just an underground publication, so we could attract more readers. So, Fangoria, we decided to put the news section in the front of the book. We decided to keep special makeup effects coverage to maybe one article per issue, to go more in-depth retrospectives on classic films. Those are some of the things we brought to it.
And I take it the horror business in Hollywood initially had a positive reaction to the magazine, right?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The horror business in Hollywood, they had a positive reaction to the magazine?
Oh, yeah, everybody wanted to be on the cover of Fangoria. When a big horror film came out, they pretty much wined and dined us, because we were there, direct line to the fans. This is before the internet, so a cover of Fangoria was like gold to a lot of these film companies. So, but there was, sometimes when there weren't major horror films coming out, because horror went through various dry spells while I while I was an editor in the late 80s and early 90s. There were periods where, I was kind of pulling my hair out trying to find a movie to put on the cover. That's why you'd see stuff like Terminator 2 on the cover of Fangoria, or Addams Family, or TV stuff or direct-to-video stuff. There were lean times. And now, if Fangoria was still being published today, there would be five movies competing for the cover of the Fangoria every month, because horror is so popular now. It's on TV, in the movies, video games. It's a real gold mine. This is like the greatest time to be a horror fan, because there's just so much material to choose from.
Yeah.
Wrap yourself up in.
Yeah, 20 years ago, I certainly didn't think that horror would ever be this popular. I thought it would always be, the part of the film industry that was looked down upon, Yeah.
So the film companies were very supportive of Fangoria, especially the indie companies.
Oh, that's good. So with Weekend of Horrors, you guys pretty much invented the HorrorCon, right?
That's true, yes. The only other ones before us were probably, there was two famous Monsters conventions in 74 and 75, and then Fangoria came along in 1985 with its first convention, and we really created the template. We were the only major horror convention during the 80s and most of the 90s. We would do 5 and 6 shows a year in various cities, and they were huge, especially LA was like just amazing. And, everybody under the sun would come to our conventions. They were so popular, and we created the formula that's now copied by every other convention out there. And now there's more conventions than ever. There's pretty much a horror convention every weekend. And like that, before that, we were the only game in town, so people would make the trip to New York or LA just to come to our shows because there were no conventions in their cities. And now there's a convention on every street corner, it seems. And it was amazing, We had guests like Quentin Tarantino, Jack Nicholson, Kenneth Branagh, and then all the masters of horror. They all came to Fangoria.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I just started going to conventions last year, and I'm hooked on them. But like when I was growing up in the Bay Area, you guys were like the only convention. You guys would come to San Jose every year.
Right. Yeah. We did at least 3 in San Jose. Mm-hmm. And those were fun. I remember one convention we did in San Jose in 1990. After the convention, we had a sneak preview of Gremlins 2, and we had some of the stars there, and then we even had Gremlins in the projection booth as a goof during the film. It was really exciting.
Oh, that's awesome.
In the movie, in Gremlins 2, the new batch, the Gremlins get loose in a movie theater at one point.
Yeah.
No, that was in the first one.
No, that was the second one.
Yeah, I think there was some kind of movie thing. So we had real gremlins in our movie theater too when we were playing the film.
Oh, that's awesome. I was like 7 at the time. It probably would have freaked me out. So in 2006, Fangoria launched a TV channel, and it didn't last long. Why was that?
We were ahead of the time. We launched a channel before there was any smart TVs or streaming or Netflix or anything like that. So we were ahead of the curve. Now everybody has, again, so many people, are doing broadband, horror channels. And we were the first, that we were the original Shudder. We were the first ones out of the gate, but unfortunately, not enough people, had smart TVs or the technology, and they weren't used to watching content on their computers, and the smartphones hadn't come around yet, so they couldn't watch on tablets or anything like that.
Yeah.
If you wanted Fangoria TV, you had to watch it on your computer. People weren't acclimated to that yet. Now everybody prefers to watch a lot of stuff on their computer, their laptop, or their phones than on their big screen TVs. And if we had tried it a few years later, it probably would have been successful.
Yeah. So you guys pioneered streaming also, it sounds like.
Yeah, there might have been other people streaming before us, but, you know, in terms of doing horror streaming 24/7, we were the first.
Yeah.
Again, this was before Chiller. This was the TV station Chiller. You know, all the other horror networks that you see on places like Roku and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And then you guys had a Fangoria radio show with Dee Snider and Debbie Rochon.
Yeah. On Sirius Satellite Radio, Sirius XM Satellite Radio. That ran for 4 or 5 years. And that was really one of the highlights of my career. I had a wonderful time doing the show with them. It was every Friday night from 10 to 1. Mm-hmm. We had loyal listeners who listened every week. We had great contests. We had great guests every show. You know, sometimes as many as 6 guests a night, maybe even more. And then we have a lot of guests would come in the studio. They'd be live with us, like Bruce Campbell, Angus Scrimm, Don Mancini, and the best of all is the time we had Mel Brooks. He was there to promote the musical version of Young Frankenstein. He was only supposed to be on for like 15 minutes, and he wound up staying for 90 minutes. Great. Really funny, and we had Sacker Leon live in the studios, and Larry Fessenden was a co-host when Max Brooks was also a co-host when he was out on one show. Yeah, it was a great time.
Nice. And then in 1996, 10 years before, you wrote a book called Men, Makeup, and Monsters, Hollywood's Masters of Illusion and FX. Was that a book you worked on for years, and you were planning on writing the book for a long time?
Well, you know, an agent came to me one day and said, you know, he saw what I was doing at Fangoria, and he said, I want to represent you. I'd like to do some books with you. Do you have any ideas? And a book on special makeup effects was the first thing I thought of. He liked the idea. He sold it right away. And then the publisher before the book could get published, the publisher went out of business. So we had to take it to another publisher, which we did, and it came out, and it was hard work, but I was very proud of it. You know, I interviewed a lot of great special makeup effects masters for that book, like Tom Savini, Dick Smith, Stan Winston, and it was a great experience. And since then, I edited a bunch of books after that. I haven't written any books by myself since then. Unfortunately, publishing is in a bit of a depression these days. But I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad the book connected with the fans.
Nice. Well, what do you think are some of the best horror movies that came from the 80s, in your opinion?
Some of the best 80s horror movies?
Yeah.
Let's see. There's so many. I wouldn't know where to start.
I know you're a big fan of Reanimator.
Reanimator, The Hitcher, those all come to mind. Nightmare on Elm Street, of course. Scream was in the 90s. The From Beyond I like a lot. I like the Plot remake, was fun.
Yeah.
Those are just a couple off the top of my head.
Yeah, those are a bunch I like too. I also like The Return of the Living
Angel
Dead.
Heart. I love Angel Heart, Jacob's Ladder. Those are Return of the Living Dead. Yeah, there's so many. Evil Dead, of course.
You think Jacob's Ladder is horror though?
Oh yeah, I think of it as a horror movie. Yeah, it's like a psychological thriller, but
Yeah.
we covered it in Fangoria.
Yeah. I really consider it a thriller too. You've gotten to know a lot of people in the horror movie business over the years, and actors and directors. Who do you think are some of the nicest ones you've known?
Angus Grimm has a real warm place in my heart. He was just such a gentleman. He became a true friend. He stayed at my house a few times. And he was always the perfect gentleman, and I really miss him. He would have been 92 last week. And we always called him on his birthday and on the holidays. And he was just a great guy, so he's definitely at the top of my list. And I really enjoyed meeting Christopher Lee a couple of times I did, and Stephen King. They were, a real legend to be around. But as far as super nice, all around special guys, Mick Garrison's one of the best. And his production company is called Nice Guy Productions, and he truly is a nice guy. And Sam Raimi was always very, very appreciative of the things Fangoria did for him. And, was always good to me. Bruce Campbell, people like Rob Zombie, he never turned me down on anything. If I wanted him at a convention or, to host one of our DVD compilations, he said yes right away. So, again, I really salute people like that who weren't only, there's a lot of takers in the movie business, but these people, they were also givers, and that's why I really like those people I just mentioned. Yeah, Tim Winston is another one. I miss him. He was a real genius in special makeup effects, but he never forgot his roots, and he was always good to the band. He was always good to Fangoria, and truly good guy. Yeah, I've been very lucky since I've gone to conventions. Just about everybody I have met has been so gracious and humble. It's like, it's funny, they do these movies that are just so dark and creepy and eerie, but when you meet them in person, they're the nicest people in the world. Right. And I've been very lucky with the ones I've met. So you started hosting panels at Monsterpalooza, and I've seen you a couple times there. Cool. Yeah, we have a show coming up September 15th through the 17th. Yep. At Bank Airport Marriott, and tomorrow I'm finalizing the schedule, and it's going to be a great show. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of cool guests. A lot of guests haven't even been announced yet. Yeah, I'll be. That you'll be hearing about soon. So it's going to be a great show. Yeah, I'll be there. Monsterpalooza is kind of like has inherited the mantle of what Fangoria was doing back in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. In terms of really making it's a real pure experience for the fans, where they get to meet all the heroes and rebels and creature effects and monster makeup and just be a big kid for 3 days in a row. Yeah, I think it's the best horror con in America. I mean, I have a blast the most when I go to that one. Yeah, I think they're the best too. And unlike a lot of other shows, that the promoters, they price the tickets very, very reasonably. They don't milk the fans for, extras like photo ops and gold tickets and all that kind of stuff. It's all the same. It's a favorite nation thing where everybody gets treated the same, and everybody's there just to have a good time and meet their heroes. Yeah, I wanted to go over and talk to you at the last one in April, but the rooms were so jam-packed I couldn't even get to the front row. Yeah, it was something. It really was something. But I'm going to try my best to meet you at the one that I'm going to in a couple of weeks. Great. Yeah, please come say it. Please introduce yourself. I sure will. Last question. Do you have any advice to aspiring Q&A moderators like myself? Just go to the shows, meet the promoters, tell them that's what you'd like to do. I think, a lot of, if you don't know the people who are running the conventions, ask to be a volunteer. Get your foot in the door that way. kind of their lifeblood. They really count on volunteers to help manage the show and direct traffic and stuff like that. These shows are so big they can't afford to pay a small army of people, so they pull together volunteers. So if I was you, I'd say, contact the various conventions in your town and say, hey, I'd love to volunteer. That's a good way to get to know the people putting the shows together. And then, you could, once you prove yourself, you could just, see if they'll let you do it.
That sounds really good. I just might try that.
Great.
Thank you so much, Tony. I appreciate you taking the time today.
You bet, Tommy. And when you're live, please send me a link.
I sure will. Can I add you as a friend on Facebook?
Oh, sure thing.
Great. Have a good night, sir.
All right, you too. Good luck. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. Tony Timpone. Ain't he a cool dude? Thank you so much, Tony. I really appreciate the talk last night. That was so awesome. And once again, everybody, Tony will be hosting Q&A panels at Son of Monsterpalooza in Burbank at the Marriott Burbank Hotel. And he will be hosting panels for John Carpenter's The Thing, the new Child's Play movie, which looks pretty freaking cool. I like that. And several others. Well, if you like this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Twitter and like me and add me as a friend on Facebook. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. I am your host, Tommy Throwback Kovac, and until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying there's no shame in living in the past because the present sucks. Later, dudes.